All right, we're going to start a new siman over here in Hilchos Chanukah, siman Tov Reish Pei Beis. The siman is pretty straightforward, it's cut and dry. We're just going to go straight to the Shulchan Aruch over here. I did make PDF files on the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch and the Nos Kelim. Honestly, there's not much going on over here. It's straight up the halachas of al hanisim and Chanukah. Dini al hanisim Chanukah bo gimel sifim. Maybe we won't finish the whole thing in one shot right now. We'll see. We'll see. Kol shmoni simei Chanukah oimer al hanisim b'birchas hamazim u'b'birchas arts u'b'tefila b'birchas hamodim. All 8 days of Chanukah, we say al hanisim. All right, we add it in when we bench and in the birchas haaretz. And additionally, in Shemona Esrei, we say al hanisim at the bracha of Modim, right after Modim. That's what we do. The Shari Chuv over here, which is highlighted, says a ger is able to say al hanisim, even though we say the nusach she'asisa la'avoseino. He's a convert. Still, you could say it. The the Shari Chuva then proceeds to quote the Michtam LeDavid, who says someone who forgot to say al hanisim, and then we move over to the next page of the Shari Tshuva. So the fellow over here, he forgot to say it, and what happened? By a savar shesar chlachzer, he thought you need to go back and say it again, which is obviously not the halacha. The halacha is you don't need to go back. And he started davening his pal v'nizkar. Oh my goodness, he remembered he made a mistake in the halacha. You're not supposed to go back. Shebem esein sar chlachzer. Yasik afil bem bracha. Just stop wherever you are in the middle because you don't need to go back. Stop wherever you are, don't continue. Important Shari Tshuva. Good to have in your back pocket, underrated halacha. You started, you went, you left it out, you thought you needed to go back, you didn't, right? So now you stop where you are, dead in your tracks. Once you realize that you don't need to go back, right, exactly. Stop right then and there. All right. Upon him, so that's now comes along the Shulchan Aruch weiter. Up top, v'im lo amari machzino. So if you didn't say al hanisim, well-known halacha, you don't go back to do it again. Look over there in Siman Reisha Dallas of Dalit, and hey, mi uim nimskar boisid bracha calls manchuli his kiras Hashem levin los gabina tale Hashem choyzer. However, if you remembered in that bracha, as long as you didn't mention Hashem's name, even if you mentioned between Ata and Hashem, you go back. As long as you don't say Hashem's name in that bracha, then you would in fact go back. Some say if you forgot al nisim in benching, some say that what? That when you forgot al nisim in benching, once you reach the harachaman, you should say harachaman yasa lanu nisim. In the flow, it's just like you did that. So you say this in the harachaman. Okay, it's already discussing Elchos benching, Farnas Barasim, and Kupei Zayin, Sev Dalit. Yeah?
So there's no benefit if you remember, you didn't say in Shon Esrei by Lokain Tsar to add it in.
Oh, we're going to get to that. There will be a benefit. Very good, Shkoch, for bringing that up. Kama Musa Shal Shabbos of Shal Rosh Chodesh Sarach Le Haskir Shal Chanukah. Now, this is a Kiddush din, if you think about this, that in Musaf on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, you need to mention Chanukah. We don't say Musaf on Chanukah. We don't say Musaf because of Chanukah itself. Nevertheless, we do because Rosh Chodesh by default always will fall out during Chanukah as well as one Shabbos because it's 8-day Shabbos once every 7 days. So it's obvious that Shabbos is going to fall out during Chanukah. Therefore, when Musaf said a person needs to say al hanisim, even though Musaf technically isn't part of Chanukah. You don't say kishem shasisa. Rather, you conclude the bracha v'asisa imam nisim that you did for with them miracles, gvudos, awesome acts b'yom mahim beisazos. In those days during this time, some say so that you would say kishem shasisa. That is the Shulchan Aruch. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah and says, "Kosav b'svarim sheb'notzich al hanisim yomer vit al hanisim bevav him between him b'richas mazon." Some say that the text of al hanisim is vit al hanisim with the vav, whether in davening or whether in benching. Kishamin aleihem yesh lidalig tevas aleim. You should skip the word aleihem when you say kishamin aleim dahach or kach oimer, because afterwards you're going to say alamcha Yisrael. Alam kain, unless you are going to say omer va'alamcha Yisrael. The reason why we say the bracha of why we insert rather al hanisim in birchas haaretz in benching in particular, and in Shemona Esrei in the bracha of modim is because it all has to do with hodah. It all has to do with thanks. It's the reason, because it's all thanks.
Mhm.
Ubebirchus mein shalosh bechanukah ubepurim.
Mhm.
And when it comes to birchus mein shalosh on Chanukah and Purim, in Mazkir and Shel Chanukah Purim,
Yeah.
you don't mention Chanukah and Purim. So in other words, by Ala Michya, we don't mention Ala Nisim. So if you ever want to ask someone a riddle, now you got another riddle addition to the jelly donut riddle. Question is, why do we not mention Ala Nisim in Ala Michya? Mishnah Berurah over here says, it's Prima Godim, Eli Rabba, we don't. He didn't say why.
Doesn't say one, yeah.
No, doesn't say why. Come back to that question. So make sure no one leaves over here in the middle. You gotta give them with some dessert to go home with. Ein machzirin. Let's get a little zoom in. You don't need to go back. Lav da'araisa ninu. It's not da'araisa. The kai atvila. By the way, don't say that we don't mention ala nisim in ala michya because it's their abanan. Because it's Rosh Chodesh also. And we do mention it, right? Yeah. All right. In machzin, you don't go back if you left it ala nisim. Why lav da'araisa ninu? It's not da'araisa. The kai atvila birchtamazin. It's referring to Shmona Esrei and benching. So both are not that right to mention them. There's no difference whether we're saying al hanisim in benching during the week or on Shabbos, even though we need to eat because it's Shabbos, and therefore we think since we need to halachically eat, if we left that al hanisim, we would need to go back. Nevertheless, you don't go back if you left that al hanisim on Chanukah. You don't need to go back. If you left out Ritzei, you would. That's during Shalashudas where you wouldn't. But Al Hanisim, you don't need. Look in Siman Kopeichas, Mishnah Berurah at the end of Sivkot and Lama Gimel. Kivshikil Harachaman, you reach Harachaman. V'huadin sheyomer kain betfila. Achak bar tefila derek b'kasha koidim yihiratzon. Same halacha applies if you left it Al Hanisim in tefila and you remember later, but before you finish your Shmona Esrei, you should say it after you finish your tefila as a bakasha before the yihiratzon.
That's the.
Yeah.
So that's you say the harachaman, you say the
No, Al Hanisim. Shmona Esrei we're talking about benching.
Yeah.
But in benching, Yom HaHarachaman, Mishnah Berurah, hey, Chaim Purim. Similarly, Purim, if you forgot the Al Hanisim insertion and you remembered later, then you say by the Rachamans. If it was Rosh Chodesh on Chanukah, and you also forgot Yalav Yavo, in which case you wouldn't need to go back, as we learned when we learned the halachas of Suda and Rosh Chodesh. What was it, Siman Tuf Yud Test, something like that? So therefore, you have to go back, and you wouldn't go back, but you do two harachamans. You remembered it before you finish benching. Harachaman of Rosh Chodesh and the harachaman of Chanukah. The answer is you mentioned Rosh Chodesh first. Why Tadir Shein Tadir? Tadir called him 8th parak brachos. Something that is common and uncommon. The common is mentioned first. Sorach lahaskir. The Yom Hu Shenitzchayev Ba'ar B'Tfilos. It's a day that we're obligated with 4 tfilos. It's talking about when you say Musaf, you have 4 tefillas, aka the regular 3, and then Musaf. But if you didn't say Al Hanisim in Musaf, so then you wouldn't go back. It's obviously a Kal V'chomer. If you're not going to have to go back for the actual tefillas, Kal V'chomer, the additional tefillah. You don't say Kishem Rasidi. Some say Mishum Delo Yishal Adam Srachav. B'shaloish Rishonis V'Acharonis. We're not allowed to ask for our needs in the first 3 and last 3 brachas, which one I say. But that's a mistake. Because of the tzibur, it's permissible. Because of a public request, you're allowed to. So it can't be the explanation. Ela ikra tam. Rather, the main reason is to call davar dahavi lahaba tiklaba. Anything that is referring to the future, they established in the future. But davar dahoda havi l'shavar. But something that is hoda that we're thanking Hashem for, that is for the past. And therefore, ikr al hanisim havi l'shavar, and the main part of al hanisim is for the past. So that's the main reason for this, that it has to do with the past. Some say that you would say, do whatever you want. If you did like master, you did like master, you did. Al hanisim, yeshloimar, and al hanisim, we should say lahashkicham. Pause to forget. Sorry to say, lo yoimer me.
Mitos.
Yeah. Okay. So Shkichim Zorazecha, we say fine.
Yeah, we said, yeah.
And then V'lo Yomer Mi Torascha with the mem. Oh, with the mem before.
Yeah.
Sorry. You say Lashkichim Zorazecha and not Lashkichim Mi Zorazecha. Fine. Sarach Leimer Shmoni Yemei Chanukah Elu Lahoidos. Say Shmonis Yamim Elu Lahoidos. Okay, that's the whole mission of Brua. Nothing fancy that I got over here. I'm not gonna try to make a whole pilpul, try to make a whole chakira over here. There's really it's that simple. Let's look at those Vahadim Mishnah Brua. See what's cooking over here. You say now hanisim with the vav because it's a hemshach. The birchas hodah shehischel. Why would al hanisim be said with the vav? Because it's a continuation of what preceded it, aka the modim, which talks about hodah. Thanks. The seder habracha hi shehoylech umoina kol ma shesarich lahoidus lahalo b'chanukah moisef od davar shesarich lahoidus. So we're adding something that we need to give thanks for. In betfila shehischil lahoidus al chayina mitzrim yedecha. Moisef Odal hanisim shekaru lanu biyamim elu bazman hazeh. What's pshat? We mentioned al hanisim and tefillah. The explanation is we are beginning to thank Hashem for our lives. So now we are adding to that thanks. We're saying thank you Hashem for the miracles that you bestowed upon our ancestors in previous generations. That's pshat tefillah, where we talk about our life. Thank you that we're alive. What about by benching? Hein bebirchas hamazon, shehischil laholdos al eretz chemda toivo moisef odal hanisim. We start thanking, thank you Hashem. We have Eretz Yisrael, we have land, and then we say, oh, by the way, thanks to the miracles as well that happened to our ancestors. Kishomer, when we say kisham daleim, you should skip the word alehem shapirish al bnei Yisrael. Fine, that's what he says. Why do we mention al hanisim and tefillah and benching? Because it all has to do with hodah. Next page. Oh, there's a back one. Next page, it's all hodah. That was the main reason for the enactment, like the Gemara says in Shabbos Chafal, Kavum b'halal v'hodah. Hanukkah is a time that's established for halal and hodah, and therefore we should say it with the other parts of hodah that we're saying in these brachos. That's why it's here, because that's what Hanukkah is about, hodah. And that's why it's not mentioned in Alamechya. There's no hodah in Alamechya. Chazal didn't act to say, Chazal only enacted to say al hanisim in a bracha where there's hodah. That's why we don't say al hanisim in the Alamechya. So the obvious question is what? Why is there no hodah in Alamechya? Furthermore, we say vinodelecha.
Right, there is.
There is hodah.
Yeah. No.
You're about to ask that?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
So we're gonna have to come to that. So we're gonna get to that in a few minutes. So let's go in order here. It says in Taf Reish Ayin, Simchat Vav. Chanukah, it's not a time that we're obligated to eat like Purim. Why? One explanation is because the decree wasn't on our bodies. It wasn't physical. It was more mental, spiritual. That's the time of Halal. The source of this is Gemara in Shabbos Chav Dal. They ask the question: do you need to mention Al Hanisim? Do you need to mention Chanukah and benching? Gemara said you don't need to. But if you're gonna mention it, do it the right way. Do it in the bracha of Hodah. So the Gemara over there says benching has the din of tefillah. Ma tefillah behodah, av birchas hamazon behodah. Just like Shemona Esrei is in the bracha of Hodah, where it talks about thanks to Hashem, aka Modim, so too in benching. So comes along Taisus over there and he says that tefillah in Shemona Esrei, it's obvious that you're going to mention it. Why? Because it's tefillah b'tzibur, and therefore it's presuming nisa. Presuming nisa when you do it with the tzibur. But by benching in the house, there's no presuming nisa. So maybe you don't need to do it by benching in the house. Kedusha says the Gemara that no, still do it.
It's Tosfos hold if you daven b'yechidus, you shouldn't say al hanisim.
Yeah, according to that, there would definitely be more of a reason. Yeah, 100%.
You should.
Right. So Lamaisa, we say it at the end of the day, but this is where the Gemara comes from, and all the Rishonim, they go into this, so there's different explanations. Anyways, so comes along the Lavush in siman Reish Ches, Osir Beis. Ali Rab actually quoted over here. It's a Katan Beis. He says, what do you mean? We say no delacha al aretz. Isn't that hodah? So he wants to say no because it's at the end of the bracha. The Divrei Chamudis already is asking kashas on this lavush over here. And he's saying it's a tam dochuk, and it's not going to be worse than if someone who forgot to say al hanisim in benching, where you would say it in the harachaman, even though there's no hodah. So just like you do it in the harachaman and it's hodahless, so then so over here. In the case of shachach, they should allow you at least b'diavad to make it up. So they should say you do it in al hamichya. So you got kashas over here. What's pshat in al hamichya and the lack of al hanisim? So comes along so he wants to say like this. The reason why we don't mention Chanukah and Purim al hanisim in the al hamichya is because it says in Yerushalmi in Brachos Parak Vav Alach Aleph. Ma'al lahaskir ba meina ma'oida. What's the din? Could you mention in al hamichya? Could you mention Shabbos and Yontif? So Dr. Gemara over there from Rabbi Zeira, he would mention it. Comes Rabbi Yirmiyah and says, since Rabbi Zeira would do it, we also anu srichin anu lemechash. We need to worry and we need to mention it on Shabbos. But what do we see? It doesn't say explicitly in the Yerushalmi in the Gemara that you mention a special insertion based on the day that it is in al hamichya, aka that you mention a ritzei situation over there, a Shabbos insertion in your al hamichya. You should say no, whatever's written in the Torah. Anything that is written in the Torah, boom, in your al hamichya, insert it in, including Rosh Chodesh. Because what does it say on Rosh Chodesh in Bamidbar Yud Yud? Ubeyom semachtechem b'moadechem b'roishi chad sheichem. Rosh Chodesh is mentioned in the Chumash. So therefore, anything that is mentioned in the Chumash is inserted in the al hamichya, but anything that isn't mentioned in the Chumash, not nach, Chumash, is not mentioned in al hamichya, aka Purim and Chanukah, and aka Purim, because it's Divrei Kabbalah, it's in Esther, but not in Chumash. Good chav, eh? Another reason why we don't mention al hamichya, why we don't mention al hanisim in al hamichya, comes along the Aruch HaShulchan over there. I think he's going on in siman reish ches, if I'm not mistaken. O Zion says like this: mentioning in al hamichya, whatever it is, Shabbos, and if you're still yotze al hamichya, if you left it out, it's not ma'akev the bracha. Doesn't hold back the whole bracha that now we're going to say you didn't fulfill your obligation. So therefore, since in al hamichya it's not ma'akev, so that's fine. However, no, sorry, I said it backwards. Sorry, excuse me. Scratch what I just said. Since al hanisim, a person would still fulfill their obligation if they left it out on Chanukah or Purim. They would still fulfill the obligation of both benching and Shemona Esrei. Right? Benching and Shemona Esrei. So therefore, they didn't enact it to be said in al hamichya. Conversely, Masha'inkein on Shabbos and Yontif and Rosh Chodesh, if someone left out Ya'alav Yavo, except Ma'ariv Rosh Chodesh, as we know, so then he wouldn't fulfill his obligation at all. Oh, so we already see that it's stronger. So therefore, by the way, he says in parentheses, you need to say this is talking about Ya'alav Yavo specifically on Rosh Chodesh in Shemona Esrei, because in benching, if you left out Ya'alav Yavo, you would still fulfill your obligation. So it's specifically talking about Ya'alav Yavo in Shemona Esrei on Shachris or Mincha. But nevertheless, we see since that it could cause you to not fulfill your obligation at all Shemona Esrei, therefore it has a starkheit to it. It's very strong. And therefore, if it's very strong, we're going to insert it in the bracha of al hamichya, unlike by Chanukah and Purim, which it wouldn't be ma'akiv. It's similar to what the Gra writes, that by benching, you're not mechuyev to mention it, make your adin, but it's a minog over here. There's not even a minog at all. Anyways, so those are a few reasons why we don't mention it. So just to recap them, it's only going to be in a bracha of hodah, and in al hamichya there's kind of not hodah. That's one reason. Another reason, whatever is mentioned in Chumash, Purim and Chanukah are not mentioned in Chumash, and then reason 3 will be that only something that it could, when if you left it out in Shemona Esrei, would you not fulfill your obligation? Would it be stronger, and therefore it would be mentioned. Beautiful. Worth it just for that. Soul siman. It's geschmack stuff. A lot of people aren't aware. Might not be able to finish the siman now. Here we go. But we also got a shtickle piskei chuvas. Let's see if we can rush. Okay. So it's not daraisa, right? The days of Chanukah are not daraisa, even though Chachamim enacted it. It's gonna be like a yontif, and they said al hanisim. Nevertheless, they didn't enact that you need to return and say it again if you forgot. So it's going on tefillah and benching, both of them, they didn't obligate you to go back. No difference between if you're benching on Shabbos or during the week. Right, during the week it's the same obligation just like Shabbos, but by benching, maybe we would think by benching there's a difference because during the week you're not obligated to eat, but on Shabbos you're obligated to eat the mitzvah to eat because of only Shabbos, and therefore we would think that you might need to go back if you forgot to sell on hanisim, since you're going to be obligated to eat. Nevertheless, no, you're not going to be obligated to go back because the obligation to eat isn't because of Hanukkah, rather it's because of Shabbos. Key point. V'od shelo tiknu chazal shemexas yimei Hanukkah yachru b'chalkam lo. They didn't enact chazal only some days of Hanukkah. If you left out al hanisim and benching, you would go back, and some you wouldn't. They just said low plug. They didn't differentiate between the two. Since most days you wouldn't have to go back if you left out al hanisim in benching, so too Shabbos you would not need to go back. Look at some in Kupecha. Oh, this is actually a very interesting addition. Okay, before that, there's a Mordechai b'shem the Rav Yah who says that after they had the minhag to mention it, and a person benched with the condition with the intention to mention al hanisim, so they equate it like a chov, and you wouldn't need to go back. The Mordechai holds you wouldn't go back. We obviously don't pass him that way. The Rav Yah in his Sefer says on Chanukah Purim, he made a mistake, and he didn't. If someone made a mistake and did not say, someone made a mistake and did not say al hanisim in tefillah, he would not go back because it's days where there's no korban musaf. So we obviously hold you wouldn't go back. But an interesting sheet of the Mordechai holds that you will go back. This is a very interesting.
You had it in mind, like if you had it in mind in the beginning of benching, right? Yeah, it's like a whole.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. So then he made it like a obligation, right? If he made it right. Right. Which usually he does have it in his mind, though.
I guess.
He just forgot. Anyways, this is a very interesting case. Let's say, for example, okay, usually we hold that when a person starts the Suda, you go after the beginning of the Suda. So if the beginning of the Suda was on Shabbos, for example, Shalat Shudas, so therefore you say Ritzay even though it's already after Shabbos, yeah? So the Shulchan Aruch over there in Siman, what? Oh yeah, fine, very good. So the Shulchan Aruch over there in Siman Kuf Peches Sifches over there writes that if a person was eating on Shabbos and then Shabbos left, so you would still mention Ritzay in benching because we go Basar Schal Suda after the beginning of the Suda. The same halacha will apply. Rosh Chodesh Parim and Chanukah, you go after the beginning of the Suda. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah and says that let's say Rosh Chodesh falls in a Motzei Shabbos and you finish your Suda when it was still day, so you mention Ritzay because that belongs to Shabbos. Okay, you go after the beginning of the Suda and you don't mention Yalav Yavo because even though Rosh Chodesh starting Motzei Shabbos right after Shabbos, nevertheless you go after the beginning of the Suda. Good. However, bad. Let's say a person ate a kazayis of pas. They ate a little bit of challah, and it was more than the size of the kazayis on Motzei Shabbos. So now you're not able to mention both because it's going to be a sneer in Eibei, Soitrin Zeh. Because if you're going to mention Shabbos, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and it's evident that now it's not Rosh Chodesh. And if you're going to mention Rosh Chodesh, you're showing that Shabbos already left. So what do you do? So in that case, if you ate a kazayis after Sitzul Chavim on Shabbos and you had Shalat Shudas that extended, you would only mention Rosh Chodesh. Exception, why? He doesn't say. Look over there for the reason. Very interesting.
After Tzeitz or after Tzeitz or after Shkia?
After Seitz, I'm not sure. Maybe after Shkia. I think it's after Seitz.
He says specifically after Seitz, no?
He says Seitz. Where does it say? Shvar Yotza Shabbos. Yeah, I think it's after Seitz. Yeah, Shvar Yotza Shabbos. Where do you say that?
Shvar
Yotza Shabbos. Yeah, that's why I said Seitz. Yeah, it implies after Seitz. But that's another sugya. So, anyways, however, let's say if the first night of Hanukkah fell out on Motzei Shabbos, even if you finish your Suda that night, you would not mention Hanukkah. You would only mention Ritzay. Why? Because mentioning Hanukkah, mentioning al hanisim Shabbos is only optional. So we see it's weaker from this din as then. So we see that even though if you ate your Shalosh Shudas, you would mention the Ya'alev Yavo, nevertheless the Hanukkah you wouldn't because Hanukkah is weaker. Interesting.
We just had this where I don't know when the next time Rosh Chodesh is going to fall out on Sunday. Probably in not next year, but in 6 months or something. I don't know what it is, but
yeah. Okay, let's quickly go over a few points over here.
I don't know if I had the Gazayas after Shkia. I'm not sure if it's after Tzeit, but I think it was.
Yeah, we'll learn when we learn Kufay Ches. Okay, now Piskei Teshuvos Osal Few Haris. Someone who ate a Suda on the 8th day of Hanukkah, and the Suda continued into the night. He would mention al hanisim and benching. However, if he davened Ma'ariv in the middle of the Suda, then he wouldn't. So the Ma'ariv changes that. Oz Beis, in places where they have the custom to do a mincha ketzara, the half mincha where they do chazar shots first. On Hanukkah, this is quoted by also the Derechu. Rabbi Aaron Cutler has the shita. You would daven the full Shemona Esrei. Why? Because of the chashivos of saying al hanisim and pursumei nisa berabim and b'tzibur. This also they do this at Yeshiva Gedola. They have Lakewood customs over there, 5 towns. They do it over there at the 2:45 mincha. I'm pretty sure they still have that.
What do they do?
Even though they do the half the quicker mincha, nevertheless.
Hey, Kedusha?
Hanukkah, they do, yeah, exactly. On Hanukkah, they do the full.
Hey,
Okay, someone who's having a long Shemona Esrei should not skip al hanisim in order that he could say kedusha with the chazan and with the tzibor. One other thing, there's a machlokes if the gabbai should answer al hanisim and marav on the first night of Hanukkah before Shemona Esrei. The minhag, it seems like, is not to answer. Rather, when the chazan, I don't think there's a minhag either. When the chazan gets to the words al hanisim, he raises his voice. I don't think there's a minhag.
wait. So a lot of yeshivas,
Right.
a lot of yeshivas that say, hey, have Heiki Kedusha during the year. You think are they more likely to not have daven full repetition for Hanukkah? Why?
Why? Because so they could say al hanisim in the tzibor.
All right, but it's not like it's not halach. It's just because of.
Also, yeah, okay, no, Aaron Cutler says it. Also, keep in mind, since they're lighting the nair in shul before Mariv, so then they know that they want to say al hanisim in tefillah. And then two other points. Someone who made a mistake and said al hanisim on Purim on Hanukkah, or vice versa, or if you said al hanisim before or after Hanukkah, you would still fulfill your obligation. You don't need to go back. If you made a mistake on al hanisim in the bracha, say if you remembered before the end of the bracha, you go back. If not, you still fulfill your obligation. It's not considered a hefsek in tefillah. Same thing regarding benching. And then also there's a whole discussion about the nusach al hanisim to say it with the vav and not, which we already saw. And then lastly is someone who mentioned accidentally the al hanisim in their al hamichi when they weren't supposed to say it. It's not a hefsek. Yeah.
How can they mention it? How can they mention Al Michya?
Whatever on Chanukah. Yeah. Bruchim too.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Mitch Hashem. Yeah, on
Right,
a mistake on what do you call it on Chanukah day. So those are some of the halachas of al hanisim. All right. Have a wonderful day.
Sure.
Yeah.